There is a sound every experienced lawn care operator knows. It happens mid-morning, usually around the third or fourth stop of the day, when the heat is already climbing and the schedule has no slack in it. It is not a bang, not a catastrophic failure noise. It is a surge, a stumble, an engine that was supposed to be holding 4,000 RPM under a full blade engagement, suddenly hunting, dipping, searching for a fuel mixture it cannot find. You ease off the blades. You try again. It surges again. And somewhere in the back of your head, a number appears. Not a horsepower number, not a torque figure, but a dollar number. The number of stops you are not going to finish today. The operators who have been in this business for 10 years or more do not talk about engines the way equipment dealers do. They do not talk about displacement curves, or valve timing, or combustion chamber geometry. They talk about which engines they have never had to think about. That is the whole conversation. The engine you never think about is the engine you buy again. And the two engines that keep showing up on the trailers of operators who have been running routes long enough to know the difference are Kawasaki and Kohler. Not because of a brochure, because of accumulated hours and the quiet absence of the surge. Briggs & Stratton built this category. That is the honest starting point, and it deserves to be said clearly before anything else. The Vanguard commercial V-twin that Briggs was putting out in the 90s and early 2000s was a legitimate workhorse. Parts were stocked at every dealer. Every independent small engine mechanic in every rural strip mall knew the platform. For a solo operator starting out with a limited budget and a used walk-behind, a Briggs-powered machine was how you got into the business without taking on debt you could not service. That access mattered. It built loyalty across an entire generation of lawn care operators, and Briggs earned that loyalty honestly. But loyalty is not a maintenance contract. And what Briggs built, Briggs also slowly dismantled, not through bad engineering, but through a corporate consolidation that left the dealer network thinner and the parts pipeline fragmented for years. But here's the nuance. Briggs didn't walk away from the commercial game. They doubled down on the Vanguard sub-brand. The new Vanguard engines are built with a completely different philosophy, and some of the new Vanguard EFI models are arguably the most advanced commercial engines on the market. But for a decade, the Briggs brand got caught in the crossfire of corporate instability, and that is a shadow the legacy line hasn't fully escaped. The machine on the trailer is the same. The ecosystem around it is not. Here is where the engineering separation becomes impossible to ignore. The Kawasaki FX series, specifically the FX735, running 23.5 horsepower, was not designed by adapting a residential engine up to commercial duty. It was engineered as a commercial platform from the ground up. Forged connecting rods, full pressure lubrication feeding every critical wear surface, rather than relying on splash oiling under sustained, high RPM load. Cast iron cylinder liners pressed into an aluminum block, which means the surface the piston rides on does not degrade at the same rate the block around it does. These are not marketing distinctions. They are the reason a Kawasaki FX running on a commercial zero turn in August heat, blade engaged for 8 and 10 hours at a stretch, does not behave the way a splash-oiled engine behaves when the oil thins and the temperatures climb. Kohler plays a different game. They focus on integration and ease of maintenance. The Command Pro line utilizes hydraulic valve lifters that self-adjust, eliminating the manual valve lash checks that are a routine, billable service item on nearly every other commercial engine. It is a design choice built for the fleet manager who wants to minimize maintenance labor hours. Fewer service intervals. Fewer things a busy operator can forget to do in the middle of a 12-week spring rush. And the Kohler EFI variants, the fuel-injected commercial engines, publish fuel savings claims in the range of 20 to 25% over carbureted equivalents running comparable loads. On a machine logging 1,000 hours in a single season, that is not a rounding error. That is a line item. Put a Kawasaki FX730V and a Briggs & Stratton commercial V-twin on comparable platforms side by side and run them through a full commercial season. The operators who have done exactly that, and there are thousands of them across landscaping forums and equipment groups and service shop conversations, are not describing a marginal difference. They are describing engines that reach different points in their service life before requiring major intervention, and the gap between those points is measured in hundreds of operating hours. Hours that are either generating revenue or costing you. If you run any kind of commercial outdoor power operation, and you want to understand why the equipment decisions you make today are going to determine your margins 3 and 5 years from now, subscribe. We cover the real math behind the machines every single week, and this conversation is just getting started. Now, run the numbers the way a working operator actually runs them, not the way an equipment salesman does. A mid-season engine failure on a commercial zero-turn is not just a repair bill. It is a 3-day minimum from the moment the engine goes down to the moment a tech has diagnosed the problem, sourced the part, and put the machine back in service. And that estimate assumes the part is in stock locally, which in the post-bankruptcy Briggs distribution environment is an assumption that has burned operators. At $400 to $600 per day in billable production for a solo operator running a full residential route. 3 days off the trailer is somewhere between $1,200 and $1,800 in revenue that does not exist. Gone before anyone has even quoted you a repair cost. The repower math is clarifying. An operator who decides to pull a failed Briggs commercial V-twin and replace it with a Kawasaki FX730V is looking at roughly $1,200 to $1,800 in parts plus labor. That is a real cost. But it is a one-time cost on a platform that the operator now expects to run another 2,000 hours without major intervention. Spread that repower cost across those hours and compare it to the lost production cost of another mid-season failure on a platform you no longer trust, and the math stops being close. Stretch it across 5 years. 2 machines. One spec'd with a Kawasaki FX that runs deep into its service life without a major rebuild. One that needs a repower at 1,200 hours. The second machine costs you the parts, the labor, the downtime, the route disruption, and in some cases, the accounts that quietly go to the competitor who showed up when you couldn't. The compounding effect of engine reliability is not a technical story. It is a business survival story. The structural problem runs deeper than parts pricing, and it starts with what happened to the dealer network. Briggs & Stratton's 2020 bankruptcy and the acquisition that followed restructured how parts inventory was distributed across the country. Independent small engine shops that used to keep commercial Briggs V-twin parts on the shelf because demand was consistent and reliable found themselves ordering from consolidated regional warehouses on lead times that don't work when a machine is sitting dead on a trailer. The local dealer who was 15 minutes away became a regional hub that is 2 hours away and 2 days out on anything that isn't a standard filter or a spark plug. This is not an accident of geography. It is the predictable result of a consolidation strategy that looked clean on a spreadsheet and ugly in the field. The operators getting stranded by it are not making a mistake. They are experiencing the downstream effect of decisions made in boardrooms that have never seen a surge at the 4th stop of a 90-degree Tuesday. The right to repair pressure running through the broader equipment industry is relevant here too. The Federal Trade Commission issued a report in July of 2021 specifically targeting manufacturers using software and design choices to restrict independent repair access. Multiple states have introduced or passed right-to-repair legislation naming outdoor power equipment and agricultural machinery explicitly, Colorado, Minnesota, and New York among them. The direction of that pressure is not ambiguous. Manufacturers who have kept their diagnostic architecture accessible to independent shops are going to be on the right side of that regulatory trend. Manufacturers who locked operators out of their own machines are going to spend the next decade either complying or litigating. Kawasaki's commercial line has maintained its reputation among independent shops by sticking to mechanical simplicity. When an FX engine goes down, any shop with a set of wrenches can diagnose it. Kohler, meanwhile, has taken a different path, making their EFI diagnostic software and service tools accessible to independent shops. That openness is a massive competitive advantage right now. It signals that these manufacturers understand that the independent tower mechanic is the one who actually keeps their engines earning money. The market evidence does not require interpretation. Walk down the spec sheet options on a current commercial zero-turn from Exmark, Skag, Ferris, or Gravely, and look at what powers the machines in the commercial tier. Kawasaki FX and Kohler Command Pro show up as the default or premium engine options across those lines. Briggs Vanguard appears where it appears, often in the entry-level or value tier configurations. Original equipment manufacturers track warranty claims and repower requests the same way operators do. They know which engines generate callbacks and which ones do not. The spec sheet is a quiet verdict delivered without a press release. The used equipment market confirms it from a different angle. A 10-year-old commercial zero-turn with a Kawasaki FX that still runs clean commands a premium in private sales and at auction compared to a comparable machine with a replaced or worn Briggs. Buyers are pricing in engine provenance before they start the machine. That is not brand preference. That is accumulated field data expressed as a dollar figure. Now, Briggs is not finished, and saying otherwise would not be honest. At the entry level, for the operator buying their first commercial machine on a tight budget, a Briggs-powered walk-behind is still accessible and still functional for the hours a startup operation typically logs. The Vanguard EFI, where it shows up, is a genuinely improved platform over the carbureted commercial V-twins that carried Briggs's reputation into the 2000s. There is a version of the Briggs story that does not end in irrelevance. But the category where Briggs still holds ground, entry-level, price-sensitive, low-hour applications, is not where operators stay. It is where they start. The conversion happens at the first repower. The loyalty gets built on the second machine and the third. And the operators converting to Kawasaki and Kohler after their first engine failure are not coming back to a platform that stranded them. The concession is real. The geography of it tells the story. The generator market ran this same arc 15 years ago. Kohler industrial engines displaced domestic alternatives in commercial backup power applications through a simple demonstration. The engine works when the building needs it most. It's the same trust-first dynamic that currently dominates the commercial landscape for Kawasaki. The contractor running a job site generator does not get a second chance to choose a more reliable platform when the lights go out at 2 in the morning. He chooses the one he trusts before he ever needs to trust it. The engine that disappears into the background because it never fails becomes the engine the entire industry specifies by default. That is exactly where the commercial lawn and landscape engine market has arrived. And the next question, the one worth watching, is what happens when software integration creeps into the small engine category the way it has crept into every other equipment category. Telematics modules, emissions compliance electronics, digital throttle controls. The window for open architecture engines that any independent mechanic can work on is not permanently open. The manufacturers who are trusted today, because their engines are accessible, are going to face the same pressure to close that access that every other manufacturer has faced. The operators who figured out the Kawasaki and Kohler advantage before the rest of the market did are not lucky. They ran the math. They read the hours. They listened to the surge. The walk-behind market is next, and the brand quietly positioned. To take it is not the one most people expect. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.